God, take away everything I think I know about this book, about this process, and about you, God, so that I can have an experience with you. Okay, bottom of page 23. So here we are, all right? We just talked about how people around us basically have a misperception of alcoholism, and they think that we're just being lazy and, we have a problem with our willpower and stuff like that, and that's why we can't get out of this rut. And they basically expect us to sort of, stop being lethargic and get our shit together. And it says, the tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, so a real alcoholic means someone who's identified the physical allergy, the phenomenon of craving, and someone who's identified the mental obsession, the ability to believe a lie in relation to alcoholism and drug addiction. So that means that they lie to themselves and tell themselves that they can drink and use and it will be different this time. It says a happy day may not arrive. It says he has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is absolutely of no avail, which means that no matter how powerful your desire is, it's not doing anything for you, right? It says this tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. And we're going to underline and highlight from at a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic all the way down to suspected. Now, why is that, right? Well, the reality is that drinking and using in the beginning is typically really fun, right? And consequences for our drinking and using, even if they happen immediately, are usually sloughed off, or we think, maybe if we do it differently, or if we manage it better this time, or sometimes we don't really have consequences that we even see because we start young and everyone around us are kind of, suffering the same consequences. For example, throwing up, acting a fool at a party, just doing dumb stuff that everyone's kind of laughing at. And the more serious consequences sort of happen gradually over time. And as they happen, the lie becomes thicker and we can't see them for what they are, or we, again, try to manage it differently. So by the time that we actually see that we're completely powerless, by the time that we actually see that we really might want to stop, it's too late. The physical allergy has, progressed to a point where we can't stop at all. We can't control our drinking at all and using it all. And the mental obsession, we've been living a lie for so long that we are no longer able to see the truth. It says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost their power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable, at certain times, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And so this is what they're talking about, those built-in forgetters. We can't remember the consequences, or we don't connect the consequences of our drinking and using to our drinking and using. For example, the first time I went to jail was for aggravated assault because I had beat up a guy who sexually assaulted my best friend's girlfriend in college. Now, I was drunk and I was high during this experience, but my brain didn't allow me to see that. It just allowed me to see the fact that I was justified in what I was doing. The second time I got arrested, I was arrested for possession for sales of narcotics. Now, again, I was drunk and I was high during that time as well, but my brain said it's the selling the drugs and selling the whatever that's the problem. It's not the using. So this is how my brain sort of lies to me, and so I can't really basically, like I said, connect the consequences to my actions. Therefore, why stop the actions? It says, the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted. Supplanted means replaced. With the old threadbare means overused idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. So again, if I start to try to connect the consequences, immediately my brain comes in with some lie that says, it wasn't that big of a deal, or if I manage it this way, it'll be okay, or it's the people that I hang out with, or I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And all of a sudden, it says there is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. So we're going to underline and highlight this whole paragraph because it's sort of describing the mental obsession and how it works in our life, right? It says, the alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. This sentence is interesting because it not only says, okay, it won't burn me this time, so there's the complete denial, but it says, so here's how, which means that all the justifications and rationalizations that come into mind that prove to us that it won't burn us, right? So we're not just left with complete denial, we're smart, and our brains are smart and sort of working against us. So they're coming up with reasons that are plausible for how we are not going to have these same consequences that we've been facing. It says perhaps he doesn't think at all, and that's true too. How often have some of us began a drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sake, how did I ever get started again? Only to have this thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow, aka F it, right? When this sort of thinking is fully established in the individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. Okay, so no people in our lives, not even ourselves, can help us. And unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history, but for the grace of God, and we're going to highlight that. So really, think back to when you got sober or when you decided to get sober and where that thought came from and why that moment where you had that thought was different. You know, can you really take credit for that? Or is it really the grace of God that gave you the relief, the willingness, the idea in the first place that this was the time that you were going to quit? And if you're in the process of quitting and you can't, and you're struggling with that, wanting to stop but can't, that hopelessness, continue to pray. Even if you don't know what you're praying to, continue to ask for help because no human power can relieve you, right? It says, but for the grace of God, there would be many thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot, and most of us have been there, so you're not alone and you can do it. So that all sounds hopeless. But then it says, there is a solution. Woohoo! Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for successful consummation or fulfillment. We're going to underline and highlight this. All right? So there is a solution. But trust you, right? If you're looking at the steps and you're like, F this looks like a pain in the ass. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to be, leveling my pride. I don't want to be breaking myself down or being broken down by other people. I don't want to confess my shortcomings. I don't want to deal with any of this shit. Trust me, you're not alone. It says all of us felt this shit, right? It says, but we saw that it really worked for others. And we had to come to believe in the hopelessness and futility or uselessness of life as we had been living it. Okay, so look around you. Every single person who is sober through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12-step program has had to do a leveling of their pride. Everyone has had to confess their shortcomings. Everyone has had to take a look at themselves and made changes, and if you want what they have, if you want a new lease on life where literally anything is possible, it's okay. You're going to have to do it, but you have a lot of people around you to ask for help, It says, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. So we're going to underline and highlight from when we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, all the way down to dreamed. And we are going to circle rocketed into the fourth dimension. Now, I think I talked a little bit about this in Bill's story, But the fourth dimension is when space meets time, which means now. So we're rocketed into the present, okay? And that's where we find heaven. Heaven is in the present. Heaven is in the present here on earth, right? And what that means is that, look, if I'm looking down at where I'm sitting right now and what I'm doing right now in this very moment, I'm literally, alone in a 5-star hotel in Jakarta. Everything is taken care of. My food is taken care of. I'm getting paid to do this. Everything is okay. There's nothing happening. There's no coronavirus in my room right now. There's no bombs blowing up in my room right now. I don't have any bills to pay in this moment right now. I don't have anyone that I need to appease or people please or anything. Like, everything is cool right now in this moment. This is pure heaven. I believe that I'm taken care of. I believe that my future is taken care of. I believe that I'm loved no matter what. And everything in this moment is cool. I have absolutely nothing to worry about. Worrying is just praying for what I don't want. Anyway, I am just here right now. And I'm rocketed into this because I do this work, and this work allows me to sit in the present. The more that I practice working with other people, the more that I practice taking people through the book, the more that I dedicate my time to showing up for people and blessing people in the moment, which allows me to be in the moment. Now, the more time that I spend in the moment, the more I get used to, and it's instinctual for me to be in that moment, And then when I take that attitude, not only from the book work, but out into every moment of my life, I get to be present in every moment of my life. Therefore, being able to, experience heaven, to be aware of the opportunities and be aware of all the beauty of the things that happen around me, and trust me, if you are present, there's so many things that you get to see in life that are so beautiful around you. Turn off the social media, turn off the Facebook, turn off the Instagram, turn off all that stuff. Step outside your door, walk around, and just be present and look at what's around you. It's amazing. It says, the great fact, so this is a fact, okay, is justice and nothing less, okay? So they're going to talk about some facts right now, and you're not going to get anything less than this because these are some promises right here. It says, we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Circle deep, circle effective. So a spiritual experience is a God-powered personality change, right? So we're going to have a deep God-powered personality change, which means that we're going to have a complete change of our inner workings, of the way we walk around this earth. Our whole personality is going to change, and it's going to be effective too, which means that we are going to be useful in this world, right? Now, this personality change has revolutionized our whole attitude towards life. Okay, we're going to circle towards life, towards our fellows, circle towards our fellows, and toward God universe, right? So we are going to now carry a how can I bless this universe, this moment, in all areas of our life, right? We're going to have that in our life. We're going to think about how we can bless our fellows. And it's going to bring us to a place of, okay, cool, I'm useful in this life. I'm useful to my fellows. I'm useful to God's universe. And again, like I talked about before, I'm grateful for this life. I'm grateful for the people around me because every single person around me gives me an opportunity to bless, to live my divine purpose, to connect to God and towards God's universe, which is an epic thing of magic beauty. It's awesome. It's perfectly constructed. I was just talking the other day with someone that I'm working with, and we were talking about, we were in Bill's story, and we were reading about Bill's bottom, and Ebby just showing up at Bill's door, and just the timing of that. The timing of Ebby showing up at Bill's door at the exact moment where Bill could hear him, where there was some willingness, where he was hopeless enough to listen, right? And how that one small moment has affected so many millions and millions and millions of lives in the future. The universe is magical. Anyway, it says the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator, Circle Creator, has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. So our Creator, the universe, is within us, right? So Basically, it's that idea of if I really understand who I am, I, the light of God, my spirit will be joyful at all times. So understanding that I am the light of God, my purpose is being the light of God, I am a piece of God, that is what's going to be the source of my joy in life, right? And the source of understanding that I have access to infinite power. It says, He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could not do for ourselves. And you're going to underline and highlight that. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we cannot do for ourselves. So anyone who's experienced hopelessness, wanting to stop but can't, that whole feeling has had the experience, especially if this thing has been lifted, and you are in a state of sobriety right now, that something that was beyond your power of being accomplished was accomplished for you, right? The obsession has just been lifted. So basically, you're going to highlight this last sentence. You're going to underline the whole paragraph, right? So from the great fact all the way down to by ourselves. Now, these are promises, okay? You're going to get connected to this stuff. Your attitude is going to be revolutionized or changed. You're going to have deep and effective spiritual experiences. Those are big, grand promises, but they are true. Now, those promises, of course, are under the condition that you're doing the work, right? Which means working with others. These promises are not going to happen if you're not doing the work. If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle-of-the-road solution. You're going to highlight this sentence. At the bottom of the page, I want you to write, anything that cannot show me a spiritual experience is a middle-of-the-road solution. Anything that cannot show me a spiritual experience is a middle-of-the-road solution. Anything that cannot show me a spiritual experience is a middle-of-the-road solution. So it says, if you are seriously alcoholic, as we were, so if you're an alcoholic, if you're a drug addict, we believe that there is no middle-of-the-road solution, which means that we cannot afford to buy into solutions that don't offer us a spiritual experience or God-powered personality change. So this is speaking to the people that we keep in our life and the kind of person that we show up in other people's lives, right? So the kind of people that I want in my life are not the people that if I have a resentment and I talk to them about it, co-sign or add fuel to the fire of my resentment, right? I want to have people in my life that try to help me have a spiritual experience or God-powered personality change or a different perspective to free me of the resentment, which means having me look at my part. Okay, that is the kind of people that I need to have in my life today. I cannot afford to have yes people or people who co-sign my shit, right? Which means that I cannot be the person who co-signs other people's bullshit either, right? Now, of course, you need to find a way that is tactful. You need to build rapport with your friends and a trust so they know that when they're coming to you, that you're coming to them from a place of love. Sometimes when people come to me from stuff, I ask them ahead of time. I'm like, are you just wanting to vent right now? Or do you want to have a solution in your life? And they'll tell me, honestly, but I'm always there and I'm always ready to help people see their part in situations. And for me, that is the most selfless way of living, because when I'm being a yes man or when I'm co-signing someone's shit or if I'm jumping on board people's resentments, basically, I'm just people pleasing. I'm people pleasing. I'm living in the fear of not wanting them to not like me. I'm living in the fear of, thinking that they won't validate me. I'm living in the fear of them not co-signing my shit down the line. But, all that is self-centeredness. All that is selfish. And basically, it's me putting my feelings ahead of integrity, right? And that is, for me, not cool. So it says, we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. And you're going to underline, we had two alternatives. So what are our alternatives? It says, one was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other is to accept spiritual help. And we're going to underline, and the other is to accept spiritual help. So a choice is two or more reasonable options. Now, our options here are to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other option is to accept spiritual help. Now, is it reasonable to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our tolerable situation as best we could? For me personally, it is not reasonable, right? Which means that I do not have a choice. So even though I have alternatives, the choice is not there. The only choice for me, the only option that's reasonable is to accept spiritual help in that situation. And I need to acknowledge that for myself, right? It says, this we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make an effort. It says a certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. Now, this dude is Roland Hazard. He was treated off and on for about a year by Carl Jung. And he was also one of the dudes who showed up in the courtroom for Ebby, if you remember from back then. It says he had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. Now, Carl Jung was one of Freud's proteges, so he was a very famous psychiatrist, and this kind of lets you know that Roland Hazard must have had money if he was able to, go to Europe and meet this dude and get treated by one of the best psychiatrists in the world. Dude had some dough. It says his physical and mental condition were unusually good. This was after treatment. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Think, if you've gone to treatment or if you're in treatment, if you're thinking like that, okay? Do you think that because you did 30 days or 6 months or a year in treatment that you know yourself so well that relapse is unthinkable? If you're sitting in that sort of confidence or arrogance, keep listening. It says, nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. Now, the reason for that is that you can sit in a treatment center for 5 years if you want, and you can stay sober that entire 5 years. But if your treatment center is not geared towards working the program as it was intended to work, which means, a process of going to meetings, working with a sponsor, going through the book, and of course, taking other people through the book, then you're gonna fall eventually unless you jump into that, right? So without working the program, it's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter how well you know yourself. It doesn't matter how many therapy sessions you have. It doesn't matter how many massages you have or acupuncture sessions you have or how many packets you've filled out or workbooks you've done or blah, blah, blah. If you're not working with other people, it's not going to work for you, There are exceptions, of course, but generally that is the case. It says, so he returned to this doctor whom he had admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things again to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatsoever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. So every time I share at a meeting of, a 12-step meeting, I always share, I'm sober today by the grace of God and the miracle of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. And this is really the paragraph that inspired the second part of what I share, the miracle of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because this really lets me know that the greatest doctors and, psychiatric minds in the world, their solutions were letting me know that this thing was really hopeless. I mean, to have to put myself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard to watch me 24 hours a day to make sure I don't drink and use, that was not feasible for me. I did not have the money to do any of that stuff. And B, that's basically just, giving me a death sentence or an insanity sentence or a homeless sentence. And the fact that I'm born in a day where the 12 steps are readily available to me all over the world is truly a miracle that I'm grateful for. It says, but this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. Hope. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. And we're going to underline willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. And next side, be willing to be willing. You're going to write, be willing to be willing. Now, the secret, the simple attitude that they're talking about is, how can I bless whatever moment that is in front of me? Love and service, that's a simple attitude. Love and tolerance, that's our code, right? It says some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had had with this doctor. The doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I've never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent it does in you. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, is there no exception? Yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to such cases as yours have been occurring since early times. So there are exceptions out there, pre-12-step. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. You're going to underline that sentence. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital. Circle vital and highlight spiritual experiences. Vital means essential, right? Essential to sobriety is a spiritual experience. So here, every once in a while, that happened. That's why I talked about the exceptions earlier. Now, the 12-step program forces you into a spiritual experience. It will lead you there. If you work the program, you will have a spiritual experience, period, without a doubt. And that's why it is a guarantee to work if you're willing to work it, right? If you're willing to change your whole attitude towards everything, which is just a practice of action, of being selfless. It says, to me, these occurrences are a phenomenon. So he doesn't understand them. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements. Now, displacements are basically just old ideas changed to new ideas and rearrangements. And they're going to describe displacements right now. It says, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Okay, so basically, you're replacing self-centeredness and selfishness with being of service and selflessness. It's that simple. That's the old idea, and that's the new idea. It says, in fact, I've been trying to produce some emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I've never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. So, upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved as he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. And we're going to highlight this paragraph from, upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, all the way down to vital spiritual experience. So, 2 reasons for this. If you're going to just a synagogue or a church or a temple or ashram or whatever, most people go a couple times a week. And that's it. And basically, they may have the intention of practicing what they hear. Sometimes they think they do, but they're not. But they don't necessarily have a specific program of action or a way to practice the things that are being preached to them in these places, right? Consistently. Sometimes they just fall off because of laziness or lethargy or whatever. The other thing is that in order to have a spiritual experience, we need a place to be able to be honest, and I don't know about you guys, but there are definitely some things that I did in and out of sobriety that I was ashamed of and would not want to admit on a group level, and if I'm not able to sort of shed my secrets on a group level or to other, members of the church or synagogue or whatever that I'm going to, then there's no way that these people can help me or help me have a spiritual experience if they're even capable of, doing that in the first place. So that means that going to those kind of places are not necessarily going to guarantee you the necessary vital spiritual experience or God-powered personality change. It says, here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience which we have already told you made him a free man. It says, we in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. And we're going to highlight this. We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen anyone drown before, but people are doing whatever they can to get air, right? Now think about how you work the program. Are you doing everything you can to have this spiritual experience? Are you doing everything you can to connect to the power of the universe? Are you upping your meetings to try to find people to help? Are you sitting through those fellowshipping with people at cafes, trying to build rapport with newcomers or other people to try to take through the book? Are you driving out of your way to places that are far away from you to do work with people? Are you picking up the phone? Are you calling people and checking in with them? At what lengths are you going to try to work the program? It says, what seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. And we're going to highlight, has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. I actually love this sentence, right? It says, what seemed at first a flimsy reed. So basically what they're saying is that the solution at first seems stupid, right? And it does. Me sitting here and reading a book with somebody seems, okay, whatever. I'm sitting and reading a book. I'm doing busy work. What is the point of this, right? But experiencing, taking people through the book, experiencing sitting with people, experiencing the process of seeing people's lives change, experiencing the process of feeling useful through this, thing, and experiencing putting this first and having faith that everything's going to be taken care of, it's changed everything for me. It says it's proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God, and it really has. It's connected me to a power that I truly didn't know was even possible to connect to, and it's giving me a sense of freedom and a sense of comfort and peace in my life that I definitely never thought was possible. So again, you're going to highlight it's proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. So we do something that seems totally ridiculous, and it winds up, altering the course of our life in ways that are unfathomable. It says a new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. And we're going to underline this sentence, a new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. And we're going to highlight a design for living. So in this book, there's a design for living. It's not just about sobriety. It's a whole new way of life, right? And basically, like I keep saying over and over again, it's a life that is working on ridding ourselves of self-centeredness and, looking towards being selfless, It says the distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book, Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. We're going to highlight this. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. So you can acquire faith in many different ways. For me, it was actually just a decision, and the decision was to follow the direction of this book because I was at a point in my life where, I had 10 years of sobriety. I'd worked the steps many different ways. I had, done everything that I thought that I was supposed to do, but was still feeling not connected, right? And this was more like my last ditch effort, where the guy who took me through the book said, this is the purest form of the AA message, follow the direction and see what happens. And so I just did, I followed direction. I put this thing first, which was the act of faith that I displayed. and my whole life changed. It says, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. And we're going to highlight, as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. So willingness needs to come from the honesty that, okay, cool, we couldn't do it on our own. It's that simple. It says, those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies, because we don't tell you to do anything specific. You can pick your own thing, pick your own God. You can continue on with the religion that you've chosen for yourself in the past, whatever works for you, as long as it works, right? If it's not working for you, all we ask is you be open to change it. That's it. If it's not working. It says, there are no friction among us over such matters. We think it of no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. So just like I was talking about. It says not all of us join religious bodies, so that's cool too, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears to be an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it, then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual matter. So they're admitting basically that, okay, cool, we have a chapter to the agnostic. Agnostic, ab means without, gnostic means knowledge. So it's basically someone who does not believe in God because they don't have knowledge of God, or they can't prove that God exists, or they can't see God, or they can't touch God, so why believe in it? And they're saying that most people that came into Alcoholics Anonymous were agnostic, so don't trip. It's not a great obstacle. You can still do this. You can still have a spiritual experience. Then it says, and they're talking about, okay, cool, sorry. Then it says, further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we have recovered. And we're going to underline and highlight that, okay? So the directions on how we have recovered are in how it works in action and working with others, basically. It says these are followed by 42 personal experiences. It says each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. You're going to underline relationship with God. So it doesn't say each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view how he got sober, or how he was relieved from alcoholism, or how he got his job back, or how he got his family back, or whatever. It says how he established his relationship with God. So it lets you know that the 12 steps is all geared towards you establishing a relationship with a power greater than you, or a God, or a creator, or a higher power, or whatever that power universe thing is to you. You get to have a relationship with it. That's the whole point of this thing. The 12 steps is a path to that power, to accessing that power, to being able to utilize that power in your life to do whatever you want in your life and have whatever kind of life you want to have for you. It says, these give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what is actually happening in our lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women, desperately in need, will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have that thing. And this is a beautiful thing, and it talks about this later on in the book, where it says your liabilities become your assets. And this is really how. Every single thing that I've done in and out of sobriety that I felt shame about, that I felt guilty about, that I had regret about, in admitting those to other people, it's allowed me to connect to people. Those things that I felt ashamed about, that I've walked through and stayed sober through, it's allowed me to give hope to people. It's allowed me to help people open up and share with me. It's allowed me to create intimate and authentic relationships with people. And it's allowed me to better be of service, So really, it's taught me that I don't need to regret anything that I've done. I don't need to feel guilty over anything that I've done. That every single thing that I've done that I may feel ashamed about is really a tool for me to use today to help others. And that's really the blessing of this, which means that the more honestly I can share with others, the better. You know, I'm not here to hide anything. So, in this blank spot, you're going to write, am I an addict or an alcoholic? Am I an addict or an alcoholic? And then answer that. Are you an addict or an alcoholic? For me, I wrote yes. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. It says, do I really want this? Do I really want this? Ask myself, do I really want this? Do I want the things that they talked about here? Do I want deep and effective spiritual experiences which revolutionize my whole attitude towards life, to my fellows, and towards God's universe? Right? Do I want my Creator to enter my heart in a way that basically is miraculous, you know? And the answer is yes, I want those things. Power equals strength to control drugs or alcohol. Power equals strength to control drugs or alcohol. Power equals strength to control drugs or alcohol. Control equals ability to control staying stopped. Control equals ability to control staying stopped. Control equals ability to control staying stopped. Choice equals two or more reasonable options. Choice equals two or more reasonable options. Choice equals two or more reasonable options. So power equals strength to control drugs or alcohol. Do I have the strength to control drugs or alcohol? Because that lets me know whether or not I have power. And the truth is that if I put drugs or alcohol in my body, I don't have the strength to control it. So I am powerless personally, right? Control equals ability to control staying stopped. On my own, left to my own devices, with my own thinking, do I have the ability to control staying stopped? No, so I do not have control. Choice equals two or more reasonable options, which is how I need to basically live my life with that kind of thinking, right? When I am, confused about what to do in a situation, one of the first things I do is I look at, okay, cool, are my options reasonable? And that basically a lot of times will take away some of what are the things I thought were choices, where I just basically have to walk the path. To me, my life is very simple today. I just live it thinking about how I can bless people, and that's it. And everything seems to work out. And I don't really have to make any crazy decisions because it's just like, okay, cool, I'm being a blessing. That's it, So this is the end of There's a Solution. We're going to do a little bit of more about alcoholism so we can get this hour in. Now, on page 30 at the top of the page, you're going to write obsession equals ability to believe a lie. Obsession equals ability to believe a lie. Obsession equals ability to believe a lie. Illusion equals false perception of reality. Illusion equals false perception of reality. Illusion equals false perception of reality. Delusion equals ability to mislead my own mind. Delusion equals ability to mislead my own mind. Delusion equals ability to mislead my own mind. Chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Bodily with the phenomenon of craving, mentally with the ability to believe a lie. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. Ask yourself, in what ways did you try to prove to yourself that you can drink and use like other people? The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. There you have it. That is the obsession. So this sort of therapy, psychological idea of obsession where you're just thinking about shit all the time and obsessing on it. That's not necessarily what they're talking about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They're talking about obsession being, that someday, the lie, believing the lie that someday you will be able to control and enjoy your drinking and using, right? That is what the obsession is that they are talking about. So you're going to underline that. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker, and you're going to highlight the word obsession. The persistence of this illusion, so the persistence of this false perception of reality, because it is a false perception of reality, is astonishing. We're going to underline that. We're going to highlight illusion. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. And we pursue it into the gates of insanity or death because of the physical allergy, right? The mental obsession is what kicks in that tells us, oh, I can do it this time. We pick it up, we put it in our body, triggers a phenomenon of craving, and then all of a sudden we're off. And some of us get relief again. Some of us get relief quickly. Some of us go insane. Some of us get arrested. Some of us become homeless. Some of us die. It says, we learned that we had to fully concede or admit to our innermost, our most intimate selves, that we were alcoholics. And what does that mean? Again, that I have the physical allergy, that I have the mental obsession, and that I have a spiritual malady. Those are the things that basically mean you're an alcoholic, right? Or an addict. This is the first step in recovery. So the very first step in recovery is to be able to admit this stuff to our most intimate selves, that we have these three things. First, the physical allergy needs to be admitted. If you cannot see the physical allergy within yourself, it's impossible for you to admit that you are an alcoholic or an addict. Then the mental obsession, the ability to believe a lie, all the rationalizations and justifications that you do out there to support you doing shit that's not working for you. And then the spiritual malady, that feeling of disconnection, that feeling of loneliness, that feeling of not being a part of, that feeling of being useless or a failure or whatever. Like if those things are happening within you, right? It says, the delusion that we are like other people or presently may be has to be smashed. So we're going to underline this whole little paragraph. We're going to highlight delusion, and we're going to circle has to be. So that's direction, right? And the direction is that this delusion, right, this ability to mislead my own mind and think that I am like other people has to be smashed. I need to get rid of that. I cannot believe that I am like other people in that way, right? Because that's where I get screwed, basically. It says, we alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We're going to highlight control. We're going to write choice above it. So we basically have lost the ability of choice, okay, around our drinking because we no longer have two or more reasonable options. It says, we know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. And we're going to highlight that sentence. And above control, you're going to write choice. And this goes back to the doctor's opinion, where the doctor told us that this physical allergy will never be eradicated. Once we have it, we have it. So we never recover control. We never recover choice or two or more reasonable options. It says, all of us at times have felt that we were gaining control, and we're going to highlight control and right choice. So there were times where, maybe it worked for us here and there, or maybe we were able to stop for a little bit, or maybe we were able to switch from smoking meth to just drinking beer, or, maybe we were able to curb it when we were in that relationship or got that job or whatever, okay? So our brains will sort of latch on to these things that we've accomplished in our lives as, okay, cool, maybe I am getting this choice back. Maybe I do have more options. Maybe I can work this thing. It says, but such intervals, usually brief, so they didn't last, it wasn't consistent, and take a look at your past. Was it consistent? Where are you at now? Were inevitably followed by still less control. We're going to highlight control and right choice, okay? So basically, those periods of control or what we perceive as control were basically short-lived, and because the disease is progressive, they were followed by, a relapse that, progressively got worse. It says, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So pitiful is miserable. Incomprehensible is impossible to understand. And demoralization is destruction of one's normal functioning morals or sensibilities. So think about how many lines that you set out for yourself that you said you would never cross, lines of integrity and lines of morals that you just crossed, that you threw out the window because of drugs and alcohol. That is the demoralization that they're talking about. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. And we're going to underline and highlight this. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. So this is progressive, okay? It does get worse over time. It does not get better. It says, we are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. And this is that whole idea of, okay, once you cross into this imaginary line of alcoholism and drug addiction, the reason why I say imaginary is that I personally, and this is my opinion, believe that it's genetic. I believe that I was born with it. I believe that, again, it's a progressive illness, so it may not have looked like it was alcoholism in the beginning, but I triggered the phenomenon of craving at a young age. I feel like I was born with the spiritual malady, and the ability to leave alive was there from the get-go too. So basically it says, you'll never be able to turn yourself non-alcoholic or non-drug addict once you've become a drug addict or an alcoholic, or that whole idea of you can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber. That's what they're saying when they're saying we're like men who have lost their legs, they never grew new ones. So once you have identified the physical allergy, once you have identified the mental obsession, once you have identified the spiritual malady in yourself, once that's done, it's done, right? Like you can't go backsies, you know what I mean? It says, neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. So they have not come up with a way to make us go backsies. It says, we have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there have been brief recovery followed always by still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Let me read that again. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. So it's not possible. It says science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Now, truth be told, even if science accomplishes this, I don't want to drink or use again. I'm in love with my connection with the power of the universe, and I would never want to give that up no matter what. So even if there was some sort of pill or injection or patch or gum or whatever that I could take to allow me to drink and use like a normal person, I know, because I see normal people drinking and using out there, I see the disconnection, and I don't want to live in that disconnection. I'm really enjoying my life as it is. It says, despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they're in that class. By every form of self-deception, and self-deception, that's denial, and experimentation, so trying new shit too, putting action behind that denial, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. And we're going to highlight this sentence. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exception to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. And think about how many different ways you've tried to prove to yourself that you were a non-alcoholic or a non-drug addict, right? Think about that. It says, if anyone who is showing an ability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. And we're going to underline this. If anyone who is showing an ability to control his or her drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman or a gentlewoman, I don't know, our hats are off to him or her, right? So, in the meetings that I've gone to in my life, this line has basically been turned into some really shitty, sarcastic, self-righteous, like, oh, that guy's going out and drinking like a gentleman, my hat's off to him, like super sarcastic, whatever. But when they wrote this, they actually meant it. You know what I mean? They meant like, oh man, if you can have fun doing that stuff, cool, awesome, go for it. It says, heaven knows we've tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people, which is true. If you've looked at by every form of self-deception experimentation, we try to prove themselves exceptions to that rule, and if you've identified that within yourself, then you know that you've tried to drink like other people. It says, here are some methods we have tried. Drinking beer only, doing Coke only, smoking weed only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, or from meth to weed, or from heroin to beer, whatever. It says drinking only natural wines. I smoke weed because it's from the earth, bro. I eat magic mushrooms because it's like the food of the earth, man. Yeah. Agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job. Taking a trip, not taking a trip. Swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath. Taking more physical exercise. Reading inspirational books. Going to health farms, aka rehabs and sanitariums, sober livings, whatever. Accepting voluntary commitment to asylums, rehabs, and sober livings. It says we can increase the list ad infinitum, underline that, without end. So these are all the things that we've tried to manage our drinking and our using, and obviously they did not work. It said, we do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself, and you're going to underline and highlight that. You can quickly diagnose yourself. Okay, so this is a self-diagnosed disease. Now, why is this why is it necessary that we need to diagnose ourselves? Well, our biggest problem in the beginning is breaking through the mental obsession, right? Is breaking through that ability to believe a lie. So if we can't diagnose ourselves, which means that if we cannot admit to ourselves, or it means that if we cannot fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics, then game over. We can't even start. So we need to diagnose ourselves just to be able to get to that level of honesty that makes the program even possible, right? That makes recovery even possible. That is why we need to diagnose ourselves. So here they're going to give us an example of a way to do that. It says, step over to the nearest bar room. So go to the bar room, go to the dealer's house, go to the nightclub, go to the liquor store, right? And try some controlled drinking, or try some controlled crack smoking, or try some controlled fucking Oxycontin popping, right? It says, try to drink and stop abruptly, Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you were honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of the jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. And you're going to underline a full knowledge of your condition, because a full knowledge of your condition is absolutely imperative and necessary in order for you to launch into this path of recovery. So they're saying, go try to control your drinking, right? Go figure it out. You need to. If you can't diagnose yourself, cool. Now, the problem with this is that you may die, but that's the risk. Of course, if you're questioning that, you're probably not thinking that that's a possibility. But I'm letting you know that if you are an alcoholic or a drug addict, that is on the table for consequences of you embarking on this experimentation. It says, though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. It says, we have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period because of their over-empowering desire to do so. Here's one. Now I'm going to stop here. We'll get into the story next time. Thank you guys for your patience on how long it took me to make this next video. I had some technical issues, but we're back in action. All right, cool. Talk to you guys later. I love you all. Bye.